There is a moment, somewhere in the quiet hours of the night, when you finally admit something to yourself that you have been running from for years. You realize that the person who claimed to love you the most was also the one who quietly dismantled you, piece by piece, until you could no longer recognize the sound of your own thoughts. You stayed awake replaying conversations, searching for the exact moment everything turned, and you found nothing. That is not because nothing happened. It is because what happened to you was never meant to be visible. It was designed to be felt, doubted, and then forgotten. And if you are listening to these words right now, something inside you already knows the truth. You were not crazy. You were not too sensitive. You were not too much. You were targeted by someone who studied your softness and used it as a map. Before we go any deeper into the psychology of what was done to you and what finally breaks their grip forever, take 1 second and subscribe to this channel, because what you are about to hear is not surface level healing talk. This is the dismantling of a system that was built inside your mind without your permission, and you deserve every single piece of insight that follows. Subscribe so the next time your mind starts spiraling at 2 in the morning, you have a voice that brings you back to yourself. Let us begin where the confusion begins. A narcissist does not enter your life like an enemy. That is the first thing you have to understand, because that single fact is the reason you blame yourself even now. They enter as a mirror. They study what you crave, what you fear, what you have not been given, and they reflect it back to you with terrifying precision. You felt seen. You felt chosen. You felt like something rare had finally arrived. And the nervous system, the part of you that has been waiting your entire life to exhale, accepted that feeling as truth. This is not weakness. This is biology. The human brain is wired to bond quickly with whoever offers safety, attention, and recognition. They knew that. They counted on it. Then came the slow shift. So slow you could not name it. A comment that stung but was wrapped in a joke. A withdrawal of warmth right after a moment of closeness. A sudden coldness when you expressed a need. You started apologizing for things you did not do, explaining yourself for emotions you had every right to feel, second-guessing the version of reality your own senses gave you. This is the beginning of gaslighting, and gaslighting does not feel like a lie. It feels like fog. You are not being told you are wrong. You are being made to feel that the part of you that perceives is broken. And once the perceiver inside you is silenced, everything else becomes negotiable. This is where their mind games take root. They do not need to control you with force. They control you with confusion, because a confused mind cannot leave. A confused mind keeps searching for the missing piece, the misunderstanding, the magical sentence that will finally make the love return. And while you are searching, they are watching. They are measuring your reactions like data. Every tear you cry teaches them what works. Every time you chase them after a silent treatment, they learn that withdrawal is their most powerful weapon. Every time you apologize first, they learn that guilt is a leash they can pull whenever they please. The silent treatment is not silence. Let that sentence land in your chest for a moment. The silent treatment is a calculated act of psychological violence. It is the deliberate withholding of emotional oxygen from a person who has been conditioned to depend on it. When a narcissist goes silent, your nervous system does not register it as distance. It registers it as danger. Your body floods with cortisol. Your stomach turns. You cannot sleep. You cannot eat. You cannot focus. And in that state of biological panic, you do the one thing they trained you to do. You reach out first. You apologize. You explain. You soften. You collapse. And the moment you collapse, they feel powerful again. That is the entire purpose. Not communication, not space, power. Blame shifting works the same way. You bring up something they did that hurt you, and within seconds, the entire conversation is no longer about their behavior. It is about your tone, your timing, your past, your face, your memory, your overreaction. You walked in with a wound and walked out apologizing for bleeding on their floor. This is not an argument style. This is a defense mechanism rooted in a deep and fragile emptiness inside them that cannot tolerate accountability. To them, being wrong is not an event, it is an existential threat. And so they will burn down the truth, rewrite the history, and turn you into the villain of a story you did not write, just to keep that hollow inner structure from collapsing. And then, just when you are ready to walk away, they pull you back. A sudden softness, a memory of who they were in the beginning, a small kindness that feels enormous because of how starved you have become. This is intermittent reinforcement, and it is the single most addictive psychological pattern the human brain can experience. It is the same mechanism that keeps people pulling the handle of a slot machine. Unpredictable rewards create deeper attachment than consistent ones. So every time they give you a crumb of warmth after weeks of coldness, your brain releases a flood of relief that feels like love. But it is not love. It is the chemistry of survival being mistaken for connection. This is how trauma bonds are built, not from too little, but from the brutal alternation of too much and nothing at all. Now listen carefully, because this is the part most people never understand. The reason their mind games worked on you for so long is not because you were foolish. It is because you were honest. You assumed they were operating from the same emotional rulebook you were. You assumed that when they hurt you, they felt something afterward. You assumed that love meant repair. You assumed that apologies meant change. You assumed that intimacy meant safety. These are the assumptions of an emotionally healthy human being, and they are exactly what a manipulator exploits. Your decency was not your flaw. It was their opportunity. Read that again until your bones believe it. Somewhere along the way, your nervous system stopped functioning like a nervous system and started functioning like a radar. You learned to read their footsteps. You learned to interpret the sound of a door closing. You learned to predict their mood from the angle of their shoulders. You became hypervigilant, not because you wanted to be, but because survival demanded it. And after months or years of this, exhaustion sets in at a level that sleep cannot touch. You feel tired in your spirit. You feel old inside your own skin. You forget what it felt like to have a thought that was not filtered through fear of their reaction. This is what people mean when they say narcissistic abuse rewires you. It does not just hurt you, it reshapes the way your body experiences the world. And now we arrive at the question that brought you here. What finally destroys their mind games forever? Not loud confrontation, not revenge, not proving yourself, not winning the argument, not making them understand. None of those things will ever work, because none of those things touch the actual source of their power. Their power was never their words. Their power was your reaction. The entire machine runs on your emotional response. Your tears, your panic, your pleading, your rage, your need for resolution. Every one of those reactions is fuel. And the moment you stop feeding the machine begins to die. This is the psychological shift that changes everything. And I want you to feel the weight of what I am about to say. The day you stop reacting is the day they lose you forever. Not the day you leave, not the day you block them. The day your inner world becomes unreachable. The day their words land on you like rain on stone. The day their silence no longer empties you. The day their compliments no longer inflate you and their criticism no longer shrinks you. That is the day the spell breaks. Not because you defeated them, but because you finally return to yourself. Before we go into how that return actually happens inside your body and mind, I want you to do one small thing. Subscribe to this channel right now if you have not already, because the truth you are hearing is the kind of truth that takes years for most people to find. And you deserve to hear it again on the nights when the old conditioning tries to crawl back into your chest. Subscribe and let this voice be the anchor that pulls you back to clarity whenever the fog tries to return. The return to yourself begins with something almost unbearable at first. It begins with grief. Not for them, but for the version of you that believed in them. You will grieve the years. You will grieve the energy. You will grieve the softer, more open version of yourself that walked into that relationship and never fully walked out. This grief is not weakness. It is the body finally being allowed to feel what it was forced to suppress in order to survive. Let it come. Let it move through you. Because underneath that grief is something they could never reach. And that is the unbroken part of you that was waiting beneath all the conditioning. As you grieve, something else begins to happen. Your nervous system starts to recalibrate. The constant alertness begins to fade. You notice that you can breathe deeper. You notice that you can sit in a quiet room without bracing for impact. You notice that your thoughts start to sound like your own again. This is not magic. This is your biology remembering safety. And as that safety grows, the emotional grip they had on you loosens, because their grip was never spiritual or mystical. It was nervous system based. They were a stimulus your body had been trained to respond to. Once the training fades, so does the response. This is where emotional detachment begins. And I need you to understand that detachment is not coldness. Detachment is the sacred space between their behavior and your inner peace. It is the realization that you are no longer obligated to feel what they want you to feel. They can rage and you can be still. They can charm and you can be unmoved. They can threaten and you can remain rooted. They can disappear and you can remain whole. This is not numbness. This is sovereignty. This is the return of the self that was hidden underneath years of performance. And now imagine the moment they realize it. The moment they send the message and feel nothing come back. The moment they perform the old tricks and watch them fail. The moment they pull the strings and discover the strings are no longer attached to anything inside you. This is when they panic. Not because they love you. They never knew how. They panic because their identity depended on the mirror you used to be. Without your reactions, they cannot feel powerful. Without your pain, they cannot feel important. Without your attention, they cannot feel real. The collapse of their control feels to them like the collapse of their self. And that is not your problem to solve. Not anymore. Not ever again. You will be tempted in those moments to feel sorry for them, to explain one last time, to answer one more message, to leave one more door open just in case. Do not mistake that pull for compassion. That pull is the last echo of the trauma bond trying to keep you in orbit. Real compassion does not require self-abandonment. Real love does not demand the destruction of your peace. The kindest thing you can do for yourself, and even for them in some quiet cosmic sense, is to stop participating in a dynamic that was killing the truest parts of who you are. You will rebuild slowly. You will have days when the old voice creeps back in and tells you that you were the difficult one, the broken one, the wrong one. On those days, remember this. A person who was truly difficult would not spend years agonizing over whether they were difficult. A person who is truly cruel would not lie awake replaying every word to make sure they did not hurt anyone. The very fact that you have questioned yourself so deeply is the proof of the conscience they did not have. Your self-doubt was never evidence of your guilt. It was evidence of your depth. You will start to notice something strange and beautiful. The people who are drawn to you begin to change. The conversations begin to feel different. The silence in your home begins to feel like a friend instead of a threat. You begin to want things again. Small things at first. A morning walk. A book you forgot you loved. A song that used to make you cry for reasons you could not name. These are not small things. These are the signs of a soul coming back online. These are the quiet fireworks of a life being reclaimed. And then one day, without ceremony, you will realize that you have not thought about them in hours, then in days, then in weeks. Not because you forced yourself to forget, but because your mind finally had room for something else, for yourself, for your future, for the version of you that was always underneath the conditioning, waiting patiently for the noise to end. That is the day the mind games die. Not in a battle, in a quiet, ordinary morning when you wake up and feel like you again. Before I leave you with the final words you came here for, do this one last thing. Subscribe to this channel. Stay close to this voice, because healing is not a single moment of clarity. It is 1,000 small returns to the truth, and you deserve a place that brings you back every time the old fog tries to roll in. Let this be that place. Let this be the corner of the internet where you are reminded, again and again, that what happened to you was real, that what you feel is valid, and that the strength inside you is far older than the wounds they gave you. So hear this now and let it settle into the deepest part of you. You were never the problem. You were the prize they could not afford to lose. So they convinced you that you were lucky to be chosen. You were the light they could not generate themselves. So they tried to dim you until you matched their darkness. You were the depth they could not reach. So they mocked the very things that made you rare.